Did we just find the very first evidence of Moses outside of the Bible? For the very first time, researchers may have uncovered physical evidence outside of the Bible that could point to Moses being a real historical figure. And it comes from a 3,600-year-old inscription found on the walls of a turquoise mine. Hi, my name is Maddie, and I created this channel to be an outlet for my obsession with prehistory. But through making these videos, I realized that our history needs to be accessible to everyone, not just those in academia, not just museum curators, but our history belongs to everyone. So if that resonates with you, make sure to hit subscribe to follow along. So what does this new discovery actually mean? Who discovered it? And could it change what we thought we actually knew about one of the most iconic religious figures in history? So there's this independent researcher named Michael Barron, and it's spelled B-A-R-R-O-N, so please excuse the mispronunciation, but his name is Michael Barron. And he's a retired rabbi and a master's student of Israel Studies and Archaeology. And he thinks that proof might be hiding in some of the oldest writings ever discovered. The Proto-Sinaitic inscription carved into the rocks of a turquoise mine at Serabit el-Khadim. At Serabit el-Khadim, deep in Egypt's Sinai Peninsula. Okay, cool, but what are Proto-Sinaitic, if I'm even saying that right, inscriptions? What are Proto-Sinaitic? I mean, I feel like we need to know what that is in order to even think this is really interesting and cool. So I'm gonna break that down. Proto-Sinaitic is a term for an early alphabet writing system, considered a predecessor to the Phoenician alphabet and other alphabets like Hebrew and Arabic. And it's one of the earliest known examples of a writing system where symbols represent sounds rather than entire words or concepts. And Proto-Sinaitic came after Egyptian hieroglyphs. So after 8 years of studying high-res images and 3D scans of these inscriptions, these carvings, our retired rabbi, Michael, he says that he's found 2 inscriptions that say, please excuse my pronunciation, Zot mi Moshe, which translates to this is from Moses, and Neam Moshe, meaning a saying of Moses. So he has been studying these inscriptions at the Harvard Semitic Museum for years in these 3D renditions, and he believes that he has found words that have come from Moses that describe themselves as this is from Moses and a saying of Moses. So if verified, these would be the oldest inscriptions outside of the Bible referencing Moses. If this is verified, this is a huge deal, and it's honestly super exciting. So these inscriptions were part of a larger set. There were more than 24 Pro-Sinaitic carvings found in this area, and they were originally found in the 1900s by an archaeologist named Sir William Finders Petrie. They're believed to have been etched by Semitic-speaking workers in that area around 1800 BC. What's crazy is that these are some of the earliest alphabetic texts that we've ever found. Now, Barron's theory isn't without pushback, obviously, like everything, but he does argue that all of these writings came from one single writer because they have like a poetic feel to them and a poetic voice that couldn't be attributed to multiple writers, which is really interesting. So he believes that it comes from one writer. And it says here in this article is that it had to have been someone who knew Egyptian hieroglyphs, but they used the Proto-Sinaitic script to encode personal and religious messages. So he points to the poetic tone and consistent style to align with one voice, not a bunch. But it goes even deeper. Some of the nearby inscriptions actually reference El, which is the ancient Hebrew name for God. But then there are other inscriptions in the same area that seem to be worshiping and represent Balat, which is the Semitic version of the Egyptian goddess Hathor. And so this is when it gets interesting. A few of those Balat inscriptions, those inscriptions of Balat, the goddess, have seemed to have been scratched out, possibly by followers of El, which is another word of the Hebrew god, El. And so that suggests a theological conflict brewing on the walls of this Egyptian turquoise mine, which is so interesting. And in the same area, they actually found physical ruins of a burned temple to Balat, with inscriptions mentioning overseers, slavery, and one phrase that might translate as ni mosh, meaning let us depart. Is all of this sounding a little bit familiar? Like a rebellious group walking out of Egypt? An exodus of sort? Okay, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, then let me explain. It's the Bible story of Exodus. It really resembles the Bible story of Exodus, and obviously this is just his speculation, but honestly, it's pretty darn interesting, and imagine the implications if it's true. So I believe that it's worth discussing, worth talking about. These elements Barron sees portrayed on the walls of the mine: slavery, a desire to leave, a religious rift, a rebellion. These all parallel the biblical story of Exodus, where the Israelites were enslaved in Egypt. Moses led them out by saying, "Let my people go." And there was a rejection of the Egyptian God in favor of Yahweh, the one true God. What if Exodus in the Bible, what if the entire Exodus didn't start on a scroll, but on the walls of this Egyptian mine? And side note, Barron even suggests that there's potential for this to connect to Joseph as well. So we'll be on the lookout for more of his theories, but that's super interesting. And not everyone's buying it, obviously. Of course, there are certain Egyptologists that say Barron's claims completely unproven and misleading. He warns that it's easy to project your own ideas onto something, which, yes, obviously that's completely valid and very true, that's a possibility. But instead of seeing that as like a warning or a problem, I personally see that as a big strength. I see this as a necessity if we're going to be solving these mysteries. Let me explain. We're not going to unlock the mysteries of the past by keeping these conversations to just one group of people. We need every discipline, every perspective, fresh ideas, and new ways of thinking. I think we should welcome historians, welcome scientists, linguists, engineers, artists, chefs, athletes, spiritual thinkers, independent journalists, independent studiers, anyone who is interested in this. We should welcome them, welcome their perspective, because all of them bring something different to the table. Because the truth is, the ancient world wasn't built into these tiny categories. It was messy, complex, interconnected, just like we are today. So if we want to truly understand it, we have to be just as open, just as collaborative, and just as curious. This isn't about proving someone right or wrong. I truly don't care who's right, who's wrong. It's about widening the lens, inviting more voices into the conversation. Some see that as dangerous, but I see that as a necessity. Because sometimes the key to solving this ancient mystery doesn't come from someone with a PhD. It comes from someone who looked at the evidence just a little bit differently. And Barron said that he's open to more research, either challenging it or confirming it. He's not dead set on this. But he's talking about it, which is so important, because no one truly knows what life looked like thousands of years ago. We're all just trying to put the pieces together. So if we ever reach a point where people aren't allowed to think freely, to ask questions, or to be wrong, I'm just gonna leave that terrifying thought right there. And so I'm not here to convince anyone of anything. I'm just here to encourage curiosity, open-mindedness, and the freedom to wonder out loud. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure you go read these articles and his papers for yourself. Tell me what you think in the comments. Do you think this could be potential proof outside of the Bible that Moses actually did exist? I don't know, but mostly it's just super exciting, and I love that there's a new idea out there to discuss and think about. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, or if you support my mission and my goal of making history and prehistory accessible to everyone, because our history belongs to all of us, then make sure you hit subscribe, like the video, and did you hear that? The ancient world is calling. We better go.